I was sitting talking to one of my dear clients, and they were convinced in every way, shape, and form that this one strategy was going to work because they knew their clients inside and out. I was equally convinced that something completely different. They were sure that systems that we put in place were not going to work because they knew their clients so ultimately well. And therefore, using video to talk to these people opposed to being on the phone was just never going to work. It's an interesting place to be because in a lot of ways, we are the people that are trying to learn what's going on. With 10 or 15 years of experience here, I had a feeling I knew what was going to go on. But my opinion and their opinion were completely valid. And in fact, there wasn't really anything other to say than, I disagree with you, until I said the keyword that one of my basic ways of making determinations. You can have an opinion, I can have an opinion, but the data will tell us. And in many ways, what we have now is such a unique opportunity to be able to deliver the idea to the marketplace and then figure it out super quickly, because the digital world is so much more efficient and so much clearer, and also very harsh. What used to be, for example, if you were going to be doing advertising, you would do mail advertising, and you would spend a lot of time creating this great copy and what looked like a good document. Then you'd send it off, and you'd send it off to a printer, and that could take 2 to 4 weeks, and if you went overseas, even longer. And then you dropped it in and you spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on mailers to find out if you got the 2% return rate that you wanted to. So that kind of test got really hard, and you had to get very good very quickly because the barrier to entry is so quick. But instead now you can put up a website, buy a little traffic, and get feedback nearly instantaneously within a 24-hour period. And that's really the quality and beauty of what we have. Your deeply held convictions are just substantiated guesses until they're verified by evidence. Too many decisions get made based on intuition, personal philosophies, and assumptions rather than empirical data. Each strategy you implement without vigorous validation is, in short, a dark, risky guess, a miscalculation. Every process anchored in anecdotes or not hard numbers should not really be listened to, but taken into account. While you cling to subjective narratives, data-driven validation is that much more important. At the end of the day, subjective opinions are simply glorified guesses, lacking the weight of methodical proof and testing. While hunches and occasionally enjoy fleeting victories, and we remember those the most, true, consistent traction requires anchoring strategies and initiatives in evidence. Without tangible verification, any conviction exists merely as hopeful fiction. The most elite performers obsess over cultural data examination to validate their approaches, rooting out some unsubstantiated assumptions and misinformation and misassumptions that they have. Every decision is a scientifically formed hypothesis to simply test and analyze and then refine. So what do you do here? Well, take a minute and try and figure out what you're trying to prove. Everyone's trying to get more customers, but how and why? And how do you really narrow down the assumptions you've made on how you get those customers? Can you develop a quick system to actually test that and figure out if that is something that even works, or if that is heading you in a different direction? So speed of implementation is really quite quick and fast in the digital world, and necessary. You can trust multiple things. One launch I did, we tested over 360 different variables within the first 6 hours. You can automate that process so much. And every time we had that test, it got better and better, and our rates got higher and higher. So by the time we actually were in the first day, we'd optimized all of our systems to make sure that the customers were being served the best. And that requires us to continually pivot. Do not get stuck into your own memories. Be mindful of what's going on and make sure that they are effective ways of getting what the final object is. Drop your ego and start looking at the systems. Start looking at the processes and start looking at what data you're having. And then try and figure out what other data you can get. Your opinion is great, but data is the king. So take a look at your systems, take a look at your assumptions, and try and test them out quickly in something very fast. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to even be difficult. It has to be functional, and it has to give you the data you want. Now, sometimes you get back and the data is A, inconclusive, or B, it is completely opposite. Then begin to pivot. Begin to pivot and learn how you're going to work. Test it out, test and test. The more you test, the better at you're going to get. And drop your assumptions. Use the data to drive the information. You may assume that your customers all want to hear about X, but instead, they're more interested and they'll spend more time listening to you if you're talking about something else. I talked about this in another video where everyone was talking about the high advanced topics, and most people need help in the simpler and easier topics. So I'm interested to hear from you. What good example of decision marketing have you seen lately? Write it in the notes below. I look forward to talking to you. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode on the Strategy Session, where we take your business from stuck to unstoppable. Here's another video I think you'd enjoy. If you found these insights valuable, remember to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell for notifications on our latest videos. Want to transform your business with expert strategies? Schedule your strategy session today by clicking the link in the description below. Remember, you're not just marketing, you're making history with Venture Gained. See you in the next video.